Once upon a time, in a village called Ezena, there lived a woman named Amara. Her beauty was incomparable, with her smooth, dark skin and beautiful eyes, with her long braided hair that flowed down her back. Despite her beautiful appearance, Amara was known throughout the village not for her beauty, but for something much darker, a secret she kept hidden from the world. Amara was born into a world of hardship and poverty. The village where she grew up was isolated with little access to education, healthcare, less opportunity for employment. The villagers relied on farming and trading small goods to survive. But even then, the villagers struggled to make ends for themselves. Amara's family was no different. As a child, she experienced hunger, loss, and desperation. When her parents died of illness, leaving her as an orphan at a young age, Amara had to cater for herself, learning to get through the harsh realities of life with little support. As she grew older, she dreamed of a better life, a life where she would no longer suffer, where she could afford finer things in life, and where people would look at her with admiration and respect. She wanted more than just survival. She wanted wealth, power, and respect. However, their village were so poor and employment opportunities were scarce. It wasn't long before Amara's depression led her down a dark path. One evening, as she walked through a thick forest surrounding her village, she stumbled upon a mysterious old man, a man who seemed to emerge from the shadows. His face was hidden by a cap, but his voice was smooth and captivating. The man introduced himself as Mazi, a wealthy trader from distant lands, known for making impossible dreams come true. Mazi promised Amara wealth beyond her wildest imagination, but there was a price for it. He explained that his wealth was connected to a very specific kind of trade known as human trade. His buyers were powerful from faraway cities who would pay handsomely for young children, especially newborn babies. Amara was shocked at first, but Mazi's words was going through her mind. Mazi told her of mothers who sold their babies to him and escaped their lives of poverty and now lived in luxury. With each passing word, Mazi's promises became more enticing. He offered her a fortune enough to change her life and the lives of everyone in the village, if only she agreed to start selling newborn babies to him. Amara left the encounter shaking, and all the words Mazi said to her was going through her mind. Days turned into weeks, and Amara tried to forget Mazi's words. But the hunger at her belly and the fact that she was finding it difficult to survive served a constant reminder of her poverty state. Eventually, the temptation became too much to resist. Months later, Amara found herself pregnant. The news spread through the village, and while some celebrated her impending motherhood, others looked at her with doubt, for they had noticed the change in her attitude, how she no longer seemed troubled by the village's struggle, how she carried herself with a strange confidence, as though she knew something the villagers did not know. When the time came, Amara gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. Her heart was filled with love for the baby boy, but the memory of Mazi's offer to sell her baby to him came through her mind, and tears started rolling down her eyes. Finally, the day came when she could resist no longer. One night, under the cover of darkness, Amara wrapped her baby in a blanket and made her way back to the forest where she had first encountered Mazi, the baby seller, the man that offered to buy her babies. When she got there, she saw him, and the man greeted her with the same calm and smooth voice. With trembling hands, Amara handed over her baby to Mazi. Mazi smiled and gave her a sack full of golds and silver, a fortune larger than anything Amara had ever imagined. Amara returned to the village a wealthy woman, but the wealth came at a cost. The villagers whispered behind her back, sensing something was wrong, but no one dared question her directly. Years passed, and Amara's newfound wealth elevated her to a position of power. She built a grand house on the outskirts of the village. She wore the finest clothes and dined on exotic foods. But her heart was never at peace. As time goes on, she gave birth to more kids and kept on selling them to Mazi for money and wealth over the years. And with each birth, Mazi would return, taking her newborns in exchange of money and wealth. Her reputation in the village grew darker, and everyone in the village started gossiping with her name. The villagers were wondering why every child she gave birth to suddenly gets lost. People began to fear her, whispering that she had made a pact with dark forces, that she was cursed. Some believed that Amara had traded her humanity for wealth and power, and that her soul had been corrupted beyond redemption. Still, no one could prove anything, for Amara kept her dealing with Mazi hidden from the world. As the years went by, Amara's wealth grew, but so did the emptiness inside her also grew. She was feared and respected, but she was also isolated in the village. No one dared approach her, and the children she had once dreamt of nurturing and raising were gone. Amara was not at peace with herself. Her conscience was judging her on her bad deeds. One night, Amara sat alone in her grand house, staring at the money and riches she had accumulated. She heard a knock at her door. It was Mazi, the man she sold her babies to. But this time, he was not alone. Behind him stood a group of children which came out to be Amara's children. They had grown, but their faces were unmistakable. Amara's heart raced with a mixture of joy that Mazi has finally returned her sold children back to her. But Mazi smiled as he spoke, saying, "You have grown rich, Amara, but your debt is not paid. These children have returned, not as your own, but as the final payment. They are no longer yours, but mine." Amara's hands trembled as she realized the true cost of her choices in her greed. She had not only sold her children, but she had sold her soul as well. Now her wealth means nothing, for the very thing she had traded for, it had come back to haunt her. Mazi disappeared with the kids, and Amara was left alone, surrounded by the riches that had once filled her with pride. In the end, Amara's wealth brought her only loneliness and despair. The villagers who had once feared her no longer spoke her name, for her story became a cautionary tale of what happens when one is willing to sacrifice everything for the promise of gold. And so Amara lived